It was 1908. A young 25-year-old journalist nervously climbed the stairs of a Pittsburgh mansion. His name? Napoleon Hill. He had only one mission: to interview the richest man in the world, Andrew Carnegie. What he didn't know was that this interview would change not only his life, but the lives of millions of people for the next 100 years. Carnegie looked into young Hill's eyes and asked a question that will echo through eternity. Young man, what if I told you there was a secret formula, an invisible law that governs all the wealth in the world? What if I challenged you to spend the next 20 years of your life studying the 500 richest men in America to discover this secret? No pay, just for the glory of sharing this truth with the world. Would you accept? Hill had only 29 seconds to respond, and his answer changed everything. 2 decades later, after interviewing Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, John D. Rockefeller, and the giants of his time, Napoleon Hill finally discovered the secret. And do you know what it was? Your mind is a magnet, but not just any magnet. A magnet that attracts exactly what you think about most intensely and frequently. And here's the part that will give you goosebumps. This works whether you believe it or not. Let me tell you a story. In 1937, an unemployed salesman named Jim was sitting on a park bench in Detroit. He had $3 in his pocket, a family to feed, and zero hope. That same week, a copy of Think and Grow Rich fell into his hands, literally, blown by the wind onto the street. He read about mental magnetism, how your dominant thoughts create an invisible magnetic field around you, like a radio frequency that attracts opportunities, people, and circumstances that vibrate the same way. Jim decided to do a radical experiment. For 30 days, Jim did something his friends considered insane. He wrote on a piece of paper, "I will earn $10,000 by the end of this year through a valuable service I will perform." Remember, this is 1937, the height of the Great Depression. $10,000 is worth over $200,000 today. Every day, upon waking and before going to sleep, Jim read this sentence aloud. But he didn't just read it. He felt it. He visualized it. He saw himself receiving that check. He already lived as if the money were on its way. Here's what Napoleon Hill discovered through his 20 years of research. When you hold a thought with intense emotion and constant repetition, something extraordinary happens in the invisible universe around you. Your subconscious mind begins working 24/7 to materialize that image. It takes you to places by chance. It makes you notice opportunities that were always there. It connects you with the right people at the right time. Hill called this creative imagination guided by burning faith. But wait, Jim's story isn't over yet. On the 23rd day, Jim was walking down a street he'd never been on before. Something made him turn left instead of following his usual route. He saw a small factory with a sign, "Salesman Wanted." Jim had no experience in industrial sales, but when he walked into that office, something was different about him. He had certainty, that magnetic certainty that comes from 23 days of reprogramming your mind. The factory owner hired him on the spot. Before I tell you the outcome of Jim's story, you need to understand the 3 pillars Napoleon Hill discovered about how your mind works as a wealth magnet. Hill interviewed Andrew Carnegie for 3 full days. Do you know what Carnegie said? "I think about making more money at least 60 hours a week. Even when I sleep, my subconscious mind continues to work on my financial goals. It's not an unhealthy obsession. It's magnetic focus. It's turning your desire into a fire so intense that it magnetizes everything around you." The hard truth no one wants to hear: if you spend more time thinking about bills, problems, and scarcity than about abundance, solutions, and opportunities, guess what your mental magnet is attracting? Thomas Edison said something fascinating to Hill. "Thoughts without emotion are like seeds without water. They exist but never germinate." When Jim visualized that $10,000, he didn't just see numbers on a piece of paper. He felt relief. He felt the dignity of providing for his family. He felt anticipatory gratitude. Emotion is what turns a weak thought into a powerful magnetic command to your subconscious. Hill discovered that the 2 most powerful emotions are burning desire and absolute faith. When you combine the 2, you create an irresistible magnetic field. This is where many people go wrong with the law of attraction. They think visualization alone is enough. But Hill was clear. Thought without action is hallucination. Mental magnetism doesn't magically bring things to you. It guides you toward the right actions. It opens your eyes to opportunities. It gives you the courage to act when you were previously afraid. Jim didn't make $10,000 sitting on the couch watching it, but the viewing drove him to that street, that day, with that energy to enter that factory. Let's go back to Jim. He was hired as a salesman with a paltry base salary but generous commissions. The company veterans laughed at him. "Nobody's buying anything in the Depression, kid." But Jim had something they didn't. A mental magnet tuned to the frequency of abundance. Within 6 months, he became the company's top salesman. Within 9 months, he had already earned $8,500. On the last day of the year, December 31st, 1937, Jim received an unexpected bonus for breaking all company records. The value? Exactly $2,500. Total for the year, $10,000 accurate. Coincidence? Napoleon Hill spent 20 years documenting thousands of stories just like this. He called it the law of attraction applied. But here's the part most people don't understand. The secret isn't attracting wealth. The secret is becoming the kind of person who naturally magnetizes wealth. Hill wrote, "You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are." Jim didn't magically attract $10,000. He transformed himself into a man with a $10,000 mindset. He began to walk differently, talk differently, think differently, and the universe responded to his new frequency. So, here's your challenge. Inspired directly by the teachings of right now, with absolute clarity, how much money you want to make and by when. Be specific. Don't just say, "I want to be rich." Put a number and a date. Write down exactly what you'll offer in return. Remember, there's no money without valuable service. What is your value to the world? Read this statement twice a day, when you wake up and before you go to sleep, with intense emotion. Visualize it. Feel it as if it were already real. Take action. Every day, take at least one action that brings you closer to this goal. Your Hill interviewed 500 millionaires. Do you know what they all had in common? It wasn't luck. It wasn't birth. It wasn't connections. It was a mental magnet tuned to the frequency of abundance. The question Carnegie asked Hill over 100 years ago, I ask you now, are you willing to change your mind's frequency for the next 30 days and see what happens? Because the truth is this, your mind is already a magnet. The only question is, what is it attracting into your life right now? But before you think this only works for businessmen in 1937, let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah lived in a one-bedroom apartment in Chicago in 1952. A single mother of two, she worked 3 jobs just to pay the rent. She found Think and Grow Rich in a donation box at church. The difference between Sarah and millions of others who read that book? She didn't just read it. She believed it with every fiber of her being. Napoleon Hill wrote about something called the Invisible Council of Advisors. Sounds crazy? Maybe. But all the giants he interviewed did it. Sarah began practicing. Every night before bed, she would close her eyes and summon her invisible council. Andrew Carnegie, Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, and then add Eleanor Roosevelt, the first lady who was breaking barriers at the time. She talked to them, literally. Mr. Carnegie, how do I turn $47 in my bank account into $5,000 in 6 months? And here's what Hill discovered, and what modern science confirms. When you do this with absolute faith, your subconscious begins to respond. Ideas begin to appear. Coincidences begin to happen. In the 3rd week of this practice, Sarah woke up at 3 a.m. with an idea so clear, it made her jump out of bed. She works cleaning houses. But what if she offered a premium service? Luxury home organization for Lake Michigan mansions? Everyone said she was crazy. You're a cleaning lady, Sarah. Those rich people will never hire you. But her mental magnet was tuned to another frequency now. Sarah did something Napoleon Hill called the most powerful principle for accumulating wealth. She formed a mastermind. Hill discovered something revolutionary. When 2 or more minds unite with a common purpose, they create an invisible third mind, a mental supermagnet that is more powerful than the sum of its parts. Andrew Carnegie told Hill, I attribute my entire fortune to the power of the mastermind. I have surrounded myself with 50 men whose minds, combined with mine, have created an unstoppable force. Sarah found 3 other women in the same situation, all cleaning houses, all dreaming of more. They made a pact. Every Monday at 5 a.m., before work began, they would meet at a cheap cafe. Each shared their specific goal. Each envisioned the other's success as if it were their own. Hill called this a harmonious alliance of purpose and effort. Here's the magic. When you celebrate others' successes with the same intensity as your own, you multiply your magnetic field. It's counterintuitive, but Hill has documented it thousands of times. Within 6 weeks, one of the women in Sarah's group landed her first wealthy client, a random referral from someone who had heard about her. She immediately recommended Sarah. Sarah entered that mansion not as a regular cleaner, but as a space transformation expert. Same person, same skills, but a completely different mindset. The landlady was so impressed that she hired her for $200 a week, more than Sarah had earned in a month at her 3 previous jobs. But here's the part that will make you believe in mental magnetism. 3 months later, Sarah was organizing the mansion's library when she found a book on the shelf. Guess which one? Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. She opened it and saw a handwritten dedication on the first page. To Margaret, who understands the power of thoughts, N.H. The owner of the mansion was a personal friend of Napoleon Hill. Coincidence? Hill would say, "There is no such thing as coincidence. There is only the law of attraction at work." When Sarah mentioned the book, Margaret smiled and said, "I knew there was something different about you. You have the energy of someone who gets it." That conversation changed everything. Margaret not only became Sarah's lifelong client, she introduced her to all her wealthy friends on Lake Michigan. Within 6 months, Sarah had 15 clients paying between $150 and $300 a week. She didn't just reach her $5,000 goal, she surpassed it. But the story doesn't end there. Here's what Napoleon Hill discovered and what Sarah experienced. The money you attract is just the consequence. The real transformation is in who you become in the process. Sarah was no longer the desperate woman with $47 in her bank account. She had become a confident entrepreneur, a team leader. Her 3 mastermind friends now worked with her, a visionary. The mental magnet didn't bring money to old Sarah. It transformed Sarah into a person who naturally magnetizes abundance. Hill wrote, "Wealth begins in the form of thought. The amount is limited only by the person in whose mind the thought is set in motion." Now, let me tell you about Michael, because not all stories begin with instant success. Michael read Hill. He did the visualizations. He wrote down his goals. But nothing happened. Absolutely nothing. Why? Because he had something Napoleon Hill called the 6 phantoms of fear, blocking his mental magnet. Hill identified 6 main ways that mental magnetism is destroyed. Michael said he wanted $100,000, but he lived in constant terror of becoming poor. He checked his bank account 5 times a day. He panicked over every expense. Hill discovered, you cannot attract wealth while obsessing over poverty. They are opposite frequencies. Thought creates reality. Thoughts of illness create illness. He had a rude awakening. His 7-year-old daughter asked, "Daddy, why are you always worried?" It broke him, and sometimes you have to break to rebuild. Michael did something radical. He wrote each of the 6 fears on separate pieces of paper and burned them. He literally burned each of them in a ritual he created himself. He said out loud, "I choose now to operate on the frequency of faith, not fear." When channeled for other purposes, it becomes an almost limitless creative force. He realized that when he controlled this energy, he had more focus, more creativity, more personal magnetism. Within 3 months, Michael launched his business. Within 6 months, he had 3 major corporate clients. Within a year, he had surpassed $100,000. But most importantly, he had become a magnet for opportunities, not just money. Let's go back to the beginning. Remember Carnegie's question to young Hill? There is a part of history that few know. After Hill said yes to the 20-year challenge, Carnegie smiled and said something that Hill only published decades later. "Young Hill, you just passed the test. I timed your answer. 29 seconds. The people who understand the power of quick decision-making are the same people who understand the power of focused thinking. All these wealthy men you will study are simply masters at controlling the kind of energy their thoughts emit. Hill spent 20 years proving this, and here we are, almost 100 years later, with quantum physics finally explaining what Carnegie already knew. Everything is energy. Your thoughts emit frequencies, and frequencies attract similar frequencies. So here's the complete truth about mental magnetism. Your mind is a magnet, but not a fixed magnet. It's a magnet you control. You choose the frequency. Jim chose the $10,000 frequency and attracted exactly that. Sarah chose the transformation frequency and transformed her life. Michael chose to eliminate fear and unleashed his natural magnetism. The question isn't if it works. Hill has proven it works. The question is, will you use it? Imagine if Andrew Carnegie were here right now, looking into your eyes the way he looked into Hill's in 1908. He would ask you the same question. If I told you that you had in your mind, right now, the power to attract any amount of wealth you truly desire, if you followed the exact principles that have turned 500 ordinary men into millionaires, would you accept the challenge? You have 29 seconds to decide. But unlike Hill, you don't have to wait 20 years to see results. You can start today, now, this very moment. Now let's talk about the most controversial chapter of Think and Grow Rich, and what all the giants did but no one talked about. Hill devoted an entire chapter to what he called sexual energy transmutation. Why? Because he discovered something shocking. All the 500 millionaires he studied had powerful sexual energy, but they didn't waste it. Their time on ambition, on genius. Hill wrote, "Sexual energy is the most powerful of human emotions." When Napoleon Hill wasn't talking about mandatory celibacy, he was talking about control, about not letting your life energy be constantly drained. He noted that Edison's greatest creative breakthroughs came after periods of tempered abstinence. Henry Ford spoke openly about how he channeled his life energy into his business acumen. Michael began practicing this, not religiously or excessively, but consciously. He realized that when he controlled this energy, he had more focus, more creativity, more personal magnetism. Within 3 months, Michael launched his business. Within 6 months, he had 3 major corporate clients. Within a year, he had surpassed $100,000, but most importantly, he had become a magnet for opportunities, not just money. Let's go back to the beginning. Remember Carnegie's question to young Hill? There is a part of history that few know. After Hill said yes to the 20-year challenge, Carnegie smiled and said something that Hill only published decades later. "Young Hill, you just passed the test. I timed your answer. 29 seconds. The people who understand the power of quick decision-making are the same people who understand the power of focused thinking." All these rich men you will study are simply masters at controlling the kind of energy their thoughts emit. Hill spent 20 years proving this, and here we are, almost 100 years later, with quantum physics finally explaining what Carnegie already knew. Everything is energy. Your thoughts emit frequencies, and frequencies attract similar frequencies. So here's the complete truth about mental magnetism. Your mind is a magnet, but not a fixed magnet. It's a magnet you control. You choose the frequency. Jim chose the $10,000 frequency and attracted exactly that. Sarah chose the transformation frequency and transformed her life. Michael chose to eliminate fear and unleashed his natural magnetism. The question isn't if it works. Hill has proven it works. The question is, will you use it? Imagine if Andrew Carnegie were here right now, looking into your eyes the way he looked into Hill's in 1908. He would ask you the same question. If I told you that you had in your mind, right now, the power to attract any amount of wealth you truly desire, if you followed the exact principles that have turned 500 ordinary men into millionaires, would you accept the challenge and watch your mental magnet work? Napoleon Hill discovered it. Jim proved it. Sarah multiplied it. Michael surpassed it. You're next, because in the end, it's not about the money. It's about discovering that you always had the power. You just needed to know how to turn it on.